Welcome back to another episode of the Real Couchwives Podcast, where we overanalyze all things Bravo. Today, we have to talk about Vanderpump Rules, guys. It is just not giving what we thought that it would be giving. We're kind of frustrated every week, and we just have to talk about it.
Yeah, we've been covering the entire season of Vanderpump Rules, and it's historically one of our favorite franchises to watch. But unfortunately, just each week, I'm dreading watching the episode, and I think that that's what a lot of the audience is feeling as well. We're even seeing that in the fact that they're reporting lower and lower viewer ratings each week as the season goes on.
Yeah, it's true. Like, if we weren't doing recaps, I don't even know if we would continue to watch. And that has never happened before.
It'd be a season 9 all over again.
Oh, gosh. So there's a lot of reasons why this could be happening, but we have narrowed it down to 3 main problems that is happening in Vanderpump Rules that we think is making it a less enjoyable season to watch. And you guessed it, one of the reasons has to do with Mr. Tom Sandoval himself. One of them is a self-producing cast, or at least seemingly so. And then another thing is just an overexposure of all things Vanderpump Rules, which I have to say I did not think would ever be a problem, because last year we were like, give me as much as I can take, like, let's go.
100%. The updates were endless. There was always new information every time you refreshed your Instagram feed or you went on Reddit or whatever. And yeah, now it's too much. We're over it. We're done.
Yeah, maybe too much of a good thing is really the case here.
For sure.
So let's get into our first problem, which is, okay, the Tom Sandoval Forced Redemption arc. Not act.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it.
Well, it is acting.
That's true.
It is acting. So I just don't understand. Bravo really missed the mark on this one. I'm so confused. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they went this route. I'm so annoyed. I'm just all of the things about this.
It's also just such whiplash, right? Like, we ended last season with the reunion where everyone was basically just like pummeling Tom Sandoval. And we were all like, yes. And we're like, girl power and all of the things. And then they pick up filming like 3 months after. So you think it's going to be kind of like a similar type of story of the girl power and all of these things. And literally right from, episode 2, because Sandoval actually only comes back in episode 2, it's a woe is me. And they're doing everything in their power to really make us feel bad for this man, but we just cannot.
Well, and it even feels like it's whiplash from just within the season, right? Like, from episode 1 to where we are now, like, it's been such a transformation, and it really has felt like they didn't know going into the season exactly what the season was going to look like, so they didn't really plan anything out. And so, like, where we've kind of like started and where we've ended up has just, feels so disconnected, and it feels so random. And there are more and more people each episode that are just like, oh, you guess you're part of this show now. Like, next week they're bringing back Jax Taylor. Next week they're bringing back Brittany. I guess maybe they already brought back Brittany. We're going to get some Brittany scenes though. Yeah. Like, more and more, there's just like these random people. They're like, maybe it'll be better if this person's in it too. And maybe this person will help figure this out. And yeah, it's just like they bet on Tom Sandoval, they bet on this working, and they just didn't. They haven't produced anything worth watching.
They really bet on Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz. Like, they're really the focal point of the season. They're like the driving force, and I don't think that we were expecting that. And a lot of the scenes just feel really manufactured, and it feels like they're trying to manipulate us. Like, it feels like they're specifically showing certain things of Tom Sandoval. They're showing him journaling because he journals now. He's working on himself. They're showing him bringing ice cream to Lisa Vanderpump.
Yeah. Well, that makes me even wonder too, like, how much does Lisa's kind of like say in this impact kind of like what we're seeing as well too, right? Like, I feel like we've always known that Lisa was very much always in favor of the boys. She's always been on their side. The Tom and Tom duo in particular, obviously she's business partners with them. She has a stake in kind of like upholding and repairing their kind of like persona on this show, and she's going to bat for them, right? And like, we've seen that in the most recent episode as well.
That's a really good point about Lisa. I think I wonder the same thing, like, you know, especially because of Tom, like, how much of this do we think is because she wants to protect Tom, We also talked about maybe she thinks that Ariana is maybe going to kind of move on to bigger and better things that we've started to see, and maybe that's why they're betting all of this on Tom Sandoval. I am shocked. Like, it's kind of giving like a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills moment where they just like are so wrong. I feel like they were so wrong on how they thought the audience would react. Like, I feel like they're probably shocked that we're not buying this. And like, it's just so, I just don't understand how they thought that that would work.
I don't know, because it's all just like so cringe, right? Like all of the scenes that we're seeing with Tom Sandoval, like him and this whole like assistant thing where he like fired this assistant for talking to Ariana and like interviewing with Ariana. And granted, yeah, that was probably unprofessional for Anne to do that, but like, you know, like he's just scummy, right? Like he just does kind of scummy things, and he like talks about Ariana in certain ways, and the way that he's talking about like Raquel now, and just like all the kind of like backlashing he's trying to do to like other cast members, like him lashing out at James at the beginning of the season. Like there's just so many like little things and like digs and stuff. It's just like, is this guy really the guy that you guys, I don't know, thought was gonna win our hearts? We were gonna see him tear up over like these like Raquel moments and stuff and be like, oh yeah, well, what a good guy.
Well, this is the thing. They gave him this season on like a silver platter. They're like, this is your redemption to be had. Like, we are going to put everything in your favor. But then he goes off and does things in real time, like going on the Vile files, where we see that this man has done absolutely zero in terms of growth. And all we see is him doubling down on his like accusations that Ariana's the worst and she's mean and she's a slob and like the whole house thing, and like, and then like the New York Times article comes out. Like, I feel like they just did so much to curate this image of him, but then well, I'm still not buying it even in the season, but then he goes off and does things outside of the season where you're just like, no.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, exactly. The New York Times article in particular, right? Like it very much makes you think about the fact that like somebody from from Bravo's like PR team or whatever called up this journalist and was like, who can we trade you for you to make this Tom Sandoval article go away? Like they have to know that this guy is not the one, and yet they keep on putting him in opportunities to like shine and be the star and do these amazing things, and like, hey, let's give you a redemption arc, let's get you a New York Times article, you are going to be the new star of Vanderpump Rules. And it's just like, what a waste. Like, you literally, why did you put Ariana like front and center at the upfronts last year and like sell this amazing narrative of like girl power, Barbie, year of the Barbie, blah, 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 and then have everybody turn on her and have like this whole like, no, we got Tom Sandoval's where the real story's at this year, guys.
He's the real victim in this. And we're going to talk about Ariana in a second, because that is kind of our second big problem that we have. But it's really funny because this most recent episode too, it feels like we're taking the redemption arc even further. And now the new story that Tom's trying to have is that he is heartbroken because Raquel has come out on the Bethany Frankel podcast that no one will even say her name. It's so funny. They just keep saying the podcast that she went on.
She went on a podcast.
And she says which podcast. And she says basically that she was like manipulated by him and that she wasn't in love with him. And now Tom is showing more heartbreak over this than every single thing he's put Ariana through. But like, I'm sorry, are we literally supposed to feel sad when you see this man like crying in a closet looking at a photo of him and his mistress that he cheated on his ex of 10 years with and be like, oh gosh, we're so sad for you?
That's just it. Well, and like, that's the crazy thing, right? Like, I feel like we don't even recognize Tom Sandoval anymore. Like, the person and the creature that he's like morphed into, like these crocodile tears that he has over Raquel, this whole thing about the house and like, you know, him buying it out and then him being like, oh no, Ariana. Like, I think that if Tom Sandoval, I was never like the biggest Tom Sandoval fan, but like, I think if Tom Sandoval like 10 years ago met Tom Sandoval today, he would be like shocked and like horrified and like disgusted at this person. Like, it's crazy.
You would hope. I mean, when Schwartz is having to be your PR person, like, you know, that something terrible has happened. Like even in the Files podcast, but even this whole season, like the first half of the season, everyone else had to tell him, bro, you're not showing any kind of remorse.
That's
like
not working.
Like stop saying like the whataboutisms, like, oh, but what about that, and what about that, and that was so much worse, and Jax is so much worse, and Ariana's mean to me. Like the fact that every single person's response to you is like, at least pretend to be sorry. They're like, you're making this so hard, dude. Like, please.
Yeah. Literally, you're making this so hard. We're trying so hard. We're literally spoon feeding you what you need to do, and still, you just don't get it.
Like, remember Schwartz on the Vile Files when he's like, he's like, that actually sounds like you're blaming Ariana. You actually feel very sorry, right? You feel bad.
Right now,
you feel bad about this. You've told me, remember the times you told me that.
We had a conversation about this. We know what was really going on. It's very unfortunate. It's really annoying.
It is.
It's very hard to watch.
And that brings us to our second problem with Vanderpump Rules, is that the cast just feels like they're starting to self-produce. Don't
know who you've been talking about.
And, Scheana, Lala, Brock. And it's just starting to feel fake, and that's never a word that I would associate to Vanderpump Rules. And this is kind of coming out in them working pretty hard to like kind of villainize Ariana, and like if not villainize her, then at least not back her, and just like be super sympathetic to Tom Sandoval and even like Joe and just like random people.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like I think that it's tricky too, because sometimes you can kind of feel like fake and like planned are kind of like conflated, but like it does feel like, we've talked about it time and time again, like these people are not friends. These people are not like, these aren't having like genuine like kind of like interactions and like genuine like whatever things happening. And I think you can like look back at like past examples of like planned things that happened on Vanderpump Rules. And obviously to a degree, like that is kind of like self-producing, right? Like I'm thinking about like Miami Girl and like Kristen having her fly out there like to be on camera and like have that be a whole thing. And even like the when Ariana and Tom Sandoval brought up the pastor to Jax and Brittany, even though it was like old news that had already been kind of like gone through the internet and stuff, but they wanted to bring it up on camera to actually talk about it. Like that's an example of kind of like planned or like fake storyline, and maybe not fake storylines, but planned storylines and self-producing those storylines. But this whole like, I'm gonna have a sit-down conversation with Joe, as like me, Lala, having a sit-down conversation with Joe, like it just feels like
you have like no connection with, and the reason for that is apparently that you're soft now. Like that's the tie. Like and like you're not like, I don't know, I guess if she was being like messy and like owning it and that being kind of like fun, that would be a little bit different. But she's not even doing that. She's doing it in the name of, her being like this like soft person and, being buddies with Tom Schwartz now, and just like everything that happened with Tom Schwartz being completely like erased from her memory last year. And she has like no care in the world about that. Like I just, I totally agree. And also like to what you were saying before about the scenes from older seasons is like, okay, yes, maybe the scenario was a little bit set up, but I fully still felt like the actions and the conversations and everything that played out within that time frame was real and genuine. And I never felt like, I just like, that was the lightning in the bottle of Vanderpump Rules, is like, this was just a real group of friends. They were incredibly messy. Yes, of course we did know, actually we learned in the New York Times article as well that like a part of being on reality TV is like, maybe you'll say things that maybe you would have thought in your head and you're going to say out loud. But in general, like that's been the magic of this show, is that like it's real. I will continue to say that forever. Like, of course, as real as reality TV can be, right? Exactly. And this just feels like, it just feels so confusing because you don't understand how you got here. Like if you look back from like the end of the last season, where Lala and Scheana were riding so incredibly hard for Ariana and profiting as well. Like there's an Uber commercial. We just saw that like Scheana did a new song about it because she had to process her feelings about how she felt in this scenario. And like just for them to go into this season and just completely change their stance is just like incredibly confusing and frustrating.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. And like, it's one thing, like, I feel like we've like in Housewives shows in particular, you see like whiplash kind of like from one year to the next where you're like, oh, something must have happened where these people are no longer friends. And that's totally fine. And we acknowledge that happens on reality TV, but you then kind of want them to like own it, right? Or like be like in that, right? Like them, like Scheana and Lala having that conversation with Ariana a episode or two ago now about Ariana like needing to leave the house and needing to like move on and, you know, needing to like, you know, get rid of these material possessions or whatever, and like them kind of like being there to console her as she's crying about this situation is one thing. And then for them to kind of like go and just like talk about her like at the sperm donor clinic the next scene. I know that it wasn't probably actually the next day or next episode, whatever that happened, but like for that to be kind of like the next thing that we saw, and then for us to see the after show where they're talking like all these like remarks and making these like snarky comments and all this like stuff is coming out, and it's just like, okay, like if you didn't want to be friends with Ariana, you should have been yelling at Ariana in the moment, right? Like you should have been like bringing that energy to Ariana in the moment. You didn't need to be like befriending her to her face and then talking behind her back. Basically, like, and like if you want to be messy, be messy.
It's so true. They're kind of like straddling the line, because it's even like even in the after show they started with like, I love Ariana. Ariana's my good friend, but these are all the reasons that she sucks. Like,
well, and even in this most recent episode with Scheana, like Scheana is like literally talking about how she wrote this song about Sandoval and how like she's putting the song out around the same time that the Bethany Frankel like podcast is coming out, and so she's very much like capitalizing off of like all of our emotions around this, and like how we are kind of like in this moment in the summer of 2023 when that happened. You know, we were thinking that Scheana was still like team Ariana, but we now are kind of going back and watching this like experience of like her actually kind of like, oh, 2 to 3 episodes ago you were talking about how you like miss your friendship with Tom Sandoval, and then an episode or two before that you were in Lake Tahoe like crying about how you missed your friendship with Tom Sandoval and how you couldn't, you know, you couldn't still be mad at him for Ariana. Like this is just so different because you were like literally last summer just like taking advantage of, hey, these are the last few months where the fans don't know that I'm not team Ariana anymore. Let me do what I can just to generate some good business. Yeah, exactly. But then you guys are going to find out in a couple months that I am actually team Sandoval now.
That's just it. And
or whatever just, like, she is.
It feels so hypocritical as well. And that's the part that I think is just so frustrating because like we don't understand what we're seeing. Like we don't understand the motivations. And it's just like, and to your point, it's not like they're just being messy. At least you can love a messy queen for, you know, providing that type of entertainment and moving plot, but like this isn't that. It's like they're not fully standing on either one. They're kind of trying to be like, we're team Ariana, but then also downplaying a lot of things or like kind of shit talking her. The main two being about the house, which we'll talk about in a minute, but also as it relates to this is being like Scheana saying, oh, like Ariana's had time to grieve, like she is doing so amazing and her life is so great and she's making all this money. I'm not there yet. But it's like, you also profited off of this a hell of a lot. Like Ariana went on your podcast. It was the first podcast that she publicly spoke about. She like you got the Uber Eats or like the Uber One, like Good as Gold thing. Like you got emo night. You got all of these things out of this as well. So you really can't sit here being like, I haven't, you know, processed. And also like doing well financially and processing your feelings are not the same thing.
No. And that's just it. That's the annoying thing too, is that they're conflating those things in like so many ways. And yeah, exactly. As you say, like the fact that like the Bethany Frankel podcast comes out with Raquel, and of all people's podcasts that Ariana decides to do her follow-up kind of like rebuttal on is Scheana's podcast, right? And like I listened to that episode. I remember listening to that episode and being like, oh yeah, they are good friends. Everything's going so well. Like this is great. And little did I know.
I would be so hurt if I'm Ariana, like watching all these scenes or like, oh my gosh, in this most recent episode where, so after Lala like talks about Ariana and how she doesn't feel bad for her because she's choosing to stay in the house, and you know, like, she's obviously not that upset, can't hear about the house anymore, which we later find out that he was bluffing the whole time, which I do want to talk about in a second. But then Lala goes and says, oh, hey Ariana, can I use your house to have my party? Because you still have one of those.
It's like, oh, okay, so
you are not saying that. You are not asking her to use the house, the thing that you just spent like 5 episodes like complaining about.
Well, and that's just it too, right? Like, I think that we also then get so riled up, or we kind of get like I'm trying to think of the word, I can't think of it in this exact moment, but like, you know, we get so like annoyed because we are then like seeing the after show, the podcast, the news articles, the Instagram posts, like all of the things that then come out afterwards as well, right? Like, we're not just seeing the like moment of like the confessional and the episode and the scenes that like were all filmed like relatively close together. Like, we're also seeing like months down the line, like all of the after effects, and it's just like,
it's a bit much, which we might actually be talking about in our third thing a little bit later. You'll see these are all connected.
They're all coming together.
So one of the biggest things that like Lala and Scheana talk about that is really frustrating is this house issue, right? It's been like the main like through line of this story. It's been like the main plot point that is continuing to be brought up, mainly to kind of villainize Ariana. Like, that's like Tom's trying to put out this whole thing that she won't sell the house because she's petty and she doesn't want him to have it, but she doesn't want to have it, and she doesn't pay any bills and all this stuff. To which we've been really frustrated episode after episode being like, no, it's not because she's petty, it's not because she's materialistic, it's because she literally just wants to make sure that she is being compensated for the amount of money that she has put into this house, right?
A totally normal thing to do.
And we find out now, like halfway through the season, that
mid-season's over.
Tom Sandoval is now actually changing his mind and might not want to buy out Ariana anymore because his reasoning is she took so long to respond that his finances changed in 3 months and he no longer can do so. But we also know that Ariana had taken long to respond because she was actually doing the due diligence of making sure she knew all the money she put in the house and what he would actually owe her. She also mentioned something about he would have to refinance, and he would have to refinance to like 2023 interest rates rather than 2021, which is very different. How frustrated was this?
It's so annoying. It's so annoying because we've known since the beginning that he was lying. We knew from the beginning that he wasn't going to be able to afford this. Like, you also like, so in this most recent episode, as you say, he talks about how, he can't afford to do this anymore, basically. He doesn't come out and say it that way, but that's basically what he's saying. And in the
he needs Schwartz to take out a loan to pay for his house.
Together. You and me go to the bank, get a loan. Totally normal. And then you're going to, on top of that loan, pay me $6,000 a month to live in my house. That's a good deal for you, right? It's unbelievable. We've known for so long that he can't afford this. It's so annoying that he's like continued to paint this narrative. He's been taught like the smack talk that this guy has been doing to Ariana,
but not just him. The beginning. That Lala and Scheana bought into this narrative is the most annoying part, and which is why we're including it in this like second problem.
They should be smarter than this.
It's like it feels like an active choice to perpetuate that narrative against Ariana. And even like there's all these scenes where they're trying to like give Tom grace, or like Lala's like, oh, like I know what it's like to be held hostage to your past, and it's like, bro, this happened 3 months ago. This is not his past.
This is recent present.
So this is present, his present and his future. Like this is it.
This is his current. Like this is so current. Oh my god. Yeah. I know it's exhausting. It's so confusing. I just don't understand Lala's motivators or anything. Like, I think Scheana, I can kind of see it a little bit more. Like, I don't think Sheena's really going in as hard as
Yeah.
Going in at Ariana as hard as Lala, I think that Scheana still kind of envisions a world in which they can kind of still maybe be friends. But I think Lala just really doesn't care at this point and doesn't really have any intention of trying to do that.
No, totally. And like, I just don't think there were seasons where Lala and Ariana were friends, but I don't think they had been for a while. And she even said on one of the after shows, she's like, oh, like Tom Sandoval, Ariana, and Katie never asked me how I'm doing. Like, there's just, yeah. But then you see these scenes where like they're super close, or like at least pretending to be close on Lala's part. And like when they found out, like when she picked a donor for her, like, or like her baby daddy, like Ariana's face was like pure excitement for her friend. Like I feel like she's 100%. Showing up for her friends. She's also letting her friends capitalize on her pain, whereas as Tom Sandoval says, he keeps being like, keep capitalizing on my pain, Scheana and everyone else, but I'm gonna make dipped out shirts.
Yeah, exactly. Dipped out, capital D, capital O for some reason. That annoys me to no end. Yeah, well, actually, okay, that's interesting that you say that about Lala, though, because that does make me also think about a scene that we saw in the most recent episode where, you know, once again, we are having Lala and Katie actually kind of like confront each other. It's around the fact that Ali told Katie that Lala said that she was miserable, that Katie was miserable. And Katie was like, did you say that? And Lala was like, well, I don't think I said that. It was very Lisa Rinna.
Yeah.
And yes, she technically didn't say the word miserable, but she said, I can tell that my friend is very unhappy. So
yeah, it's like literally this is the same thing.
Kind of forgive Ali for reading between the lines.
People are saying she's pulling a Lisa Rinna pretty hard, where she's kind of just like having all of these like 100%. One-on-ones with everyone and getting super messy, but like not really having a dog in the fight.
Like, or having a storyline of her own.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so you have like this conversation between like Katie and Lala again, where like Lala's basically saying that like she doesn't know if like Katie's like really her true friend, or like if she even cares about her, and like this whole like back and forth. And it's just so interesting because it very much echoes this conversation that Ariana and Lala had at the beginning of the season, where Lala was like, I don't know if you're really my friend, I don't know if you really care about me, like, and she just kind of like had like that kind of like, it kind of felt a little bit disingenuous of this, like, I'm going to confront Ariana about not being a good friend to me in this moment. And I'm going to use that as kind of an opportunity to like get out of the whole, like get away with the whole, like me reaching out to Raquel thing. And now we're having it again where it's like, I'm going to kind of get out of like calling you miserable and like talking behind your back. And I'm going to like spin it and turn it around to be on you, and like make it about the fact that I don't think that you're like really a good friend to me. And it's just like, it's this kind of like produced storyline from Lala that's just like really boring. And it like, it's just, and it kind of, I guess, also comes back to the whole Tom Sandoval arc thing and like the year of the Barbie of like, we could have had this amazing season of like all these women like being like badasses and like being friends and like banding together against Tom Sandoval and against the boys, and they could have yelled at them for so many hours and we would have watched all of it, and we didn't get any of that. And instead we're getting like these like pathetic scenes of just like nothing happening, and like
it's so upsetting. I keep thinking about the season we thought we were gonna have with the girl power and like you said, the year of the Barbie, and I just like, I don't understand why we continue to revolve around the Toms. Like what was the thinking here? And then you mentioned a little bit earlier the New York Times article where like they kind of straight up said that there was like a bit of a come to Jesus moment, right? Yeah. With Alex Baskin. Could you explain that one for people who haven't seen it or read it?
Yes. Yeah. So basically in the New York Times article, the journalist talks to Alex Baskin to kind of talk about, you know, the season in general, and talk about Tom Sandoval and talk about his like redemption arc and everything that we're seeing here. And Alex Baskin, you know, talks about the fact that he had said that Vanderpump Rules was a little bit on its like last legs before Scandoval broke, and Scandoval allowed it to kind of like breathe a new life. And then they go into this season, and about halfway through the season, they had to have the cast kind of come together, and they had to have a come to Jesus moment where they all kind of needed to recognize that they needed to be able to kind of like put together a TV show so that they would have something to produce. Like they needed to like do the work in order to have a season, basically.
Like they need to have
because
group
what they were
scenes. Like,
yeah, because basically the scenes that they were getting and what they were filming, like, it wasn't coming together. It wasn't becoming a storyline. It wasn't, and they needed like they always have like an A plot, a couple B plots. Like, the A plot is obviously the Tom Sandoval like story arc of like, this is his redemption, and then the B plots are probably like, Scheana and Brock needing a nanny and Lala getting a sperm donor. And that's about it. Like, there's no Tom Schwartz every once in a while will bring somebody a plant. Like, that's it.
or date like a 20-something-year-old with Katie.
Yeah, there you go. So Katie and Tom got a little storyline in there as well. And so that was the come to Jesus moment for the cast. And I think we very much clearly can kind of like see when that took place and the shift that happened. Specifically, I think after the Tahoe trip, like, I really think that was when it happened, and it's just been different ever since.
But what's interesting is James is the only one that's like not following suit, and he's actually.
I don't think you can produce James.
No, but like, I am loving. I have never liked James more in any season. I know. He is the only one who's standing up for Ariana. He's standing up for Katie. This most recent episode, where in the span of like 2 minutes, he just completely demolished Tom Sandoval, was like.
Great.
Perfection.
That was great. That's just it. We just needed that every episode, and then we would have been like, wow, best season ever.
Like, why is he the one to be backing them? It's just so confusing. And I know, like, this isn't, like, obviously to each their own. There is also talk out there that, like, Lala is apparently the voice of reason, and some people are saying that they're frustrated with Ariana and feeling like she's like a queen bee, but like, I just don't see that. Like, I don't see her. She's literally just being like, these are my boundaries, and if you want to be friends with him, that's cool, but that's going to change our relationship. And she still shows up to film these scenes.
She's still filming with Tom Sandoval, technically. Like, she's been in a lot more scenes with Tom Sandoval this season than I ever thought that she would be.
Fully. And then the last kind of thing in this point too is just the frustration of, they poke her, like Brock. They'll poke her, they'll kind of get her riled up. Obviously, it's also been 3 months, right? Like, they made a conscious decision to pick up filming after 3 months. Obviously, she's still angry. Like, you can see the way that she reacts in the after show, which is even a little bit later, and she's completely calm, like, in all of her retorts. And she's not trying to, like, she doesn't bring it up unless it's brought up to her, whereas Tom is going to bring her up every second. Yeah. But it's just, like, the way that they're like, oh my God, they poke her, and then she responds, and they're like, oh my God, you're so angry. Like, you need to get yourself under control. Like, we talked about this a little bit last episode, but like, do we need to make a compilation of all the times that Tom Sandoval has screamed at people? Even just this episode, like, even just this season. Yeah. Okay, I'm done.
No. You make really good points. Yeah, and I don't know. It's only been 3 months, and also, like, she just had like that like health scare with Maya, and that was when like the height of like her emotions really came out, where like right after that happened. Like, of course she's going to be the absolute maddest she could possibly be at this individual right after she's like thought that she could potentially lose her dog, like, yet again, like second summer in a row, right? Like, this is just like, these are things that trigger you, these are things that upset you. And I'm sure that there were kind of like mirrors of like what happened with Maya between what happened with Charlotte, and like the fact that like Tom like wasn't really like that invested in like taking care of Charlotte, and Charlotte needed medication, and Charlotte passed away when Ariana was like going on a girls trip and like had to come home like to like basically be with her dog. Like, and it's just, like, of course her emotions are so much more heightened, and she's this upset because who wouldn't be like
But then they're like, well, you're disgusting. You have food in your room. You're such a slob. Yeah. Like, it's just, it feels so unfair. I just like, I don't understand any of it. And the whole just like, oh, she's so angry narrative is like really upsetting. Also, the narrative with the house, not to go back to the house, but it has been a really big point this season, is like, why is the default conversation, well, we know Tom Sandoval is trash. Exactly. So you need to rise above it. We know that
he won't leave, so you have to leave.
Like,
this is your job now.
It's just like so misogynistic, and I don't understand it. And like, girls just trying to protect her like financial situation and make sure that she doesn't get like duped by this man again. Yeah. So okay. So as you can see, this gets us really riled up, and this is the feeling that we have after every episode, and it's just like, it feels like deja vu. It's just like another like, how am I going to be frustrated this episode? And then it brings us to our third problem, which is just kind of like the oversaturation, or just like overexposedness. That's not a word.
Overexposure.
Overexposure is the word. Of Vanderpump Rules. You know, we not only do we have the episodes, but then we have the after show, and then we have every single one of them talking about their podcast. I think there's at least 10 now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, like, Anne has a podcast, Lala has a podcast, Katie has a podcast, Scheana has a podcast, Tom has a podcast, other Tom like stars on that podcast. Like, there's a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, even
just in the group
like
alone.
Billy Lee has a podcast.
Oh, Billy
Raquel
Lee has
a podcast.
Oh, right, Raquel has a podcast.
So we're at 8.
And then they also like to go on like Nick Vile's podcast. Yeah. Kristen has a podcast.
Oh yeah, Kristen has a podcast.
So
Jackson and Brittany
have a podcast.
So this is it, and I understand why this happened, because last year it was pandemonium. Like, literally, we were all so invested, totally. and it did play in their favor, and we couldn't get enough. And I think they expected that to continue. I think they wanted to keep up the momentum, but I think because of reasons 1 and 2 that we just mentioned, we are not really liking what we're seeing, and then you're just forcing more of it down our throats, and we're getting more frustrated, and it almost feels like homework at a certain point that I need to watch all of these things. Maybe that's more for us because we're recapping it,
but still, even if we weren't, I'm sure that we would still feel like a little bit like it was like homework, right? And I also feel like we're like, because of this kind of like overexposure and like this like constant like connection to like, you know, all of the takes that everybody has on TikTok and all of the Instagram, and then the pictures, and like then the Instagram also, they like release the like 7 minutes of the next episode. I feel like we're in this like weird like time warp where we're watching the episodes as they come out. And then almost immediately after that comes out, like, there's all of the follow-up like takes on like Instagram and TikTok, let's just say. And then there's also like the 7 minutes of the next episode. So then you start to watch the 7 minutes of the next episode. And then you also are like hearing all of these stories on all the podcasts about like what happened at the reunion. And you're just kind of like overwhelmed by like this like circle of information that's like, and you're just like trying to like put clues together and figure out what's going on. And you're just kind of like, oh my God, I'm so lost. Like, what is actually happening in current day? Like, even just keeping track of like the episodes and like when we are in the season is impossible.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's such a good point, but it's just so funny because I'm just thinking back to like, I think the first or second episode of this season that we were recapping, where like after show is like amazing and it's required and we love it, and
for them.
And now we're like, no, God, make it stop. And I think that it just has to do with how we're liking the season. Like, I feel like if we were liking the season more, I think maybe we would enjoy it a little bit more. But even to that extent, I do think everyone talking about it on their podcast is just like too much. Like, even there's an Instagram shout out, Vanderpod Recaps. Like, this person is doing the Lord's work. Like, honestly, it's just like there's so many, and even those I can't even keep up with. Just reading them,
notes.
Not even listening to it.
Literally,
it's so much. I'm also like kind of shocked that they're allowed to do this. Like, that they're not
notes,
or no, to like talk about it this openly in their podcast. Like, obviously there's certain things that are off limits, but like to a certain extent, it's
I definitely feel like the Summerhouse kids are a lot more like closed-lipped about it.
Tight-lipped?
And like tight-lipped? Yeah, tight-lipped. And I feel like they're like much better. Like, they'll go on to like watch what happens live, and they like really won't like, you know, divulge any kind of like new information. It's very much like, oh, well, you're just gonna have to watch the rest of the season and see what happens. And I think that that's kind of good, because like, there's a couple instances of, obviously, like Paige has a podcast, and like there's a couple of instances of like different podcasts that like different members have gone on, but for the most part, like, you know, we don't really like hear about them until it's airing, and then like there's like speculation when it's not airing about like what the next season's going to be, but there's just not the same level, and it's like just making that season so much more enjoyable to kind of watch, right?
It is. I mean, like, we had no idea until we started watching the episodes just how bad the relationship of Lindsay and Carl was going, mainly because, you know, Lindsay was going on that PR spin. If you're interested in that, check out our other episodes because we do get into it. It's a good point, but it's funny just because, like, I feel like these are the things, like the VPR people being so open is what I've literally praised them for in the past. I've literally been like, they're very accessible and they let us in. So it's just kind of funny that, like, we kind of change our minds on how much we want from it depending on how we're feeling about this season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I also just feel like Lala's podcast in particular used to be like I have to admit I didn't really listen that much, but when I would tune in now and then, like, I feel like she used to talk about other stuff, but does she really talk about anything else now?
No, which is so funny because she's all like, oh, like, stop talking about this, like, get something else to talk about, but it's like it's literally all you're talking about as well. So yeah, it's just like, it's a lot. It feels heavy. I don't know where they go from here. A lot of people, like a lot of our commenters have been like, I'm done. Like, I can't watch anymore. And like, it's so sad because it's just like, it's such a good, it's my favorite franchise. Like, I like, one of my friends just started watching it and like the joy that I had that she was watching it was like,
I know.
For people to experience those first few seasons, like, it's just like incredible. And for it to have come to this,
I know, it's upsetting. That's just it. And like, it's just so hard to conceptualize what like next year could possibly look like for them to have like even like a semblance of like a normal cast. Like, I just don't think that that's a thing that could happen. And yeah, we're just, you know, a lot of people on the line are saying we've jumped the shark. We're on the other side of it now. We're just going to kind of watch it like die off eventually, slowly but surely. Like,
that's so sad. Well, even
it's done.
I think it's Katie in an interview. Someone has been like, oh, like, are you still friends with that group? Or are you sad you're not friends with that group? And she's like, they're not friends. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, they just, and I think this is what we're picking up on too, right? Is like, they're just not as close as they used to be.
That's just it. Like, I think Scheana and Lala are friends. I think Tom and Tom are kind of friends, but even then I think that their relationship's a little bit fractured. And yeah, I think Katie and Ariana are a little bit friends. Katie and Lala are a little bit friends, but
it's not about it the way that it used to be. Like, I am like honestly shocked that I have an easier time watching The Valley right now than Vanderpump Rules. Me too. I know. Like,
I almost like welcome it because I'm just kind of like, okay, let's just turn my brain off.
It's just like pure like chaos, but it is kind of funny. And like, as much as I never thought I would want Jax or Kristen's messiness back, there is something kind of like nice about it. It's like, oh, this is what I understand.
Yeah, exactly. That's just it. I'm like, oh, you guys are all delusional. That's great. That's exactly what you need in a TV show. Like, some delusion, some ego, some mess. It's a good repertoire. And then like one person to be like the straight man that's like not like a straight man, but like the straight man of like, you know, well, you guys are all crazy. Just to bring you back down to reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are the reasons that we are not having a good time watching Vanderpump Rules. Let us know what you think. Are you feeling the same? What do you think is going to happen next year? We are going to continue to watch and recap for you. Don't you worry. And I also just have to say again, I've said it like multiple times, but like, even though we're feeling this now, like, I love this franchise. Like, it is so near and dear to my heart. I don't want any of this to feel like it's not. It's just kind of like, honestly, this is the first season minus season 9. Okay, this is the second season. This is the second season in 11 seasons that I've been like, this isn't fun.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is kind of impressive on its own, right?
That is pretty impressive. Like, there was that one season where they had the funeral for the lizard, but even then, like, that was like one storyline.
Oh, I remember.
That was like season 7 or 8.
Or even 8 was like a little shaky, but like,
but at least Stassi and Beau got engaged.
Jax went absolutely mental.
Haywire. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, there were good things. That was the season that Stassi had her book signing at Tom and she yelled at Tom Sandoval, and it was glorious.
It was glorious.
That was a good season.
There's still a part of me that wishes Stassi would come back, although like, I know it's not what she needs. Like, similar to Jax, this is not what Jax's family needs.
Big time.
But selfishly, I miss Stassi and Beau.
Yeah, I just wish we could get like one reunion or like one like little mini season of the old cast or something. I don't know, it'd be kind of fun.
The VPR Ultimate
Yeah, that'd be
ultimate
so cool.
trip.
Ultimate, yeah, not girls or singles or whatever, but like something. Who knows? We'll see. All in good time.
Well, that was fun. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Yeah.